Good morning, RockFish Church. Good morning. It's good to be with you here again this morning at Anderson Creek. For those of you that are new, that I haven't had the chance to speak with yet, my name is Clay. I'm part of the communications team here at RockFish Church. I'm excited and honored to be with you this morning. This is a different message. This is not your typical Palm Sunday triumphal entry message. So, if you've been in the church, if this is your second Easter in the church, then you probably know what I'm talking about that typical Palm Sunday message. Preachers, we have a habit, we get comfortable. We get comfortable. So I don't know if you've had the experience. I've been in a church before where after year 2, I could tell you what the sermon series were going to look like for the next year, because they pretty much followed the same pattern. So we're not doing that this year. We're taking things a little differently, and I'm really excited about this one. It's the first time in a long time. God confirmed something to me this week in preparing for this message that really excited me. See, God confirmed to me that I'm still a young man. Now, some of you may not know what I'm talking about. In Joel, God, when he prophesies, God said, "I'll pour out my spirit on all flesh." He says, "My young men will see visions." So I actually had 2 visions this week. I'm going to talk about one of them for a second. But see, I was excited because it said the old men will dream dreams. So I was excited they were visions because, that at least by his definition, I'm still a young man. So I'm good with that. So I was thinking about this, and it was really interesting. And I haven't even shared this with my wife. I wasn't sure how I was going to begin this, where I was going to use this story, if I was going to use it today. But I just feel like it's kind of with what we're talking about, it's a good place to start. And thank you to the worship team for cutting it from 4 songs to 3. I appreciate the extra time, Daniel. They knew I was here. So, no, in all seriousness, I found myself walking the streets of heaven. And then I had this chance to sit down and talk with who is probably, if I had to name a favorite of all the apostles, is my favorite, and that would be Peter. Oh, yeah. See, I love Peter because Peter didn't always get it right. So there's hope for me in that, because I know I don't always get it right. So that may be why Peter's one of my favorites. But I got a chance to sit down and talk with Peter. And I wish that this story would continue along that great trajectory. But I got a chance to sit down, and I wanted to ask these questions, so I started asking Peter these questions. And Peter said, whoa, slow down. He said, "You know about my experience. You've read everything there is to know. Now tell me, given the fact that you lived at a time where you had more freedom than the world had ever known, you had more technological ability than the world had ever known, you had more knowledge and access to the knowledge of God than the world had ever known. Tell me about your great exploits for our great God." And in that moment, I was crushed. The sermon series, the 30 Pieces of Silver, I love the way it was promoted when it first started out. And I'll come back to that because I kind of ended that abruptly. But, we all like to think that we're not like Judas, that we wouldn't have traded Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. We're not like those people who on Palm Sunday were yelling Hosanna and celebrating the triumphal entry of the King coming into Jerusalem to claim his kingdom, but then turned around on Friday and were like, "Look, this hasn't worked out the way we thought it would, so crucify him." But in a lot of ways we are. Patrick talked about last week, things we trade for, those things that become our 30 pieces of silver. Power and control, money, pride, pleasure, acceptance. He really did a good job talking about those things, but there's one more thing. I don't know if it's one more thing we trade for or if it's because of our desire for this thing that we trade for these others, but we trade for comfort. How many of you like to be uncomfortable? See, normally when I ask a question like that, I'll raise my hand too because I'm part of it, but I don't like to be uncomfortable. I like my comfort. Our culture tells us that we need this comfort. They tell us our lives will be better if we're comfortable. Your lives will be better, if you just had this car. Because, I mean, think about it. If you had this car, you don't even have to know how to parallel park. It'll do it for you. I mean, and we have heated seats. So you get to a certain point where it's not even about staying warm. It's about your back hurts. So now you got heated seats in your car to help your back. You know, all these, if we just have all this stuff, we'll be comfortable. And in our comfort, that is where our life is the best. And yes, we do that as a church because we become comfortable with our holy huddle. We become comfortable with our Sunday morning routines. Guys, I wish that God would give me one of those pump you up and excite you and everything's going to be wonderful messages, but it seems like every time my name comes up on the preaching rotation, it's a tough one. It's hey, somebody's got to tell you the hard truth, so yeah, we'll stick this guy out there and they can just not like him and be mad at him and everything will be good. This is just the reality of it. We become comfortable. My wife and I were at a point before we stepped into a larger role at RockFish Church. We were very comfortable. We got up Sunday mornings were our mornings. We still came to church. We loved the 1 o'clock service at the Rayford campus. Amen. Because Sunday morning, that was our morning. We could get up and put a pot of coffee on. And we could just mill around and take our time. And it was that one day a week that we knew we didn't have to be anywhere until 1 o'clock. We became comfortable with that. We'd even go out to eat lunch at the same place every Sunday. The servers knew us. We walk in, they'd walk by and wave and come back with our drinks. I mean, it was just... We get comfortable. We as humans love our comfort. But the reality of it is we weren't called to be comfortable. Our calling has nothing to do with our comfort. Now, this whole 30 Pieces of Silver series, it's kind of, as you would assume, being Easter, we're talking about Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. Because if it weren't for that series of events, none of the rest of it matters. Jesus could have come. Think about it. We celebrate Christmas, and we make a big deal out of Christmas, but that's just the beginning of the Easter story. Because Jesus coming to earth, if he doesn't fulfill the destiny of the cross and the tomb, his coming in a manger doesn't matter. It's of no consequence at all. In Matthew 16:21, this is where Jesus is starting to tell them to prepare the disciples for what's coming, for what's going to happen. It says, from then on, Jesus began to tell his disciples plainly that it was necessary for him to go to Jerusalem and that he would suffer many terrible things at the hands of the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of religious law. He would be killed, and on the third day he would be raised from the dead. And unfortunately, in the American church today, a lot of us tend to believe that Jesus followed that up with, but don't worry, guys, I've came to take all the bad so you won't have to. Jesus did not come to die on the cross so we could live, and I hate to use this phrase, but God keeps hammering, so we could live our best life now. And that's not an indictment against any individual. I know that phrase has been used by somebody, but that wasn't the purpose. He didn't come for that. He didn't give them news. Jesus was good news. He was coming to preparing them for what was to come. They understood Messiah to mean a certain thing, and we'll get to that, but Jesus was letting them know, hey guys, this is not going to go down the way you think it's going to happen. Because see, Jesus follows that up. Instead of saying, but don't worry, I'll take all the bad, you guys will have all the good. He follows it up with this. He says in verse 24 of Matthew 16, it says, then Jesus said to his disciples, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world and lose your soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? For the Son of Man will come with his angels in the glory of his Father and will judge all people according to their deeds. Jesus lays it out for them. We have to understand they would have, in this culture, when they heard Jesus say, take up your cross, the only people that carried a cross, that took up a cross, were dead men walking. When you took up your cross, that's because you were going to put your cross down when you were going to be nailed to it. They would have understood that. They got this idea, whoa, wait a second. Now, Jesus started off, you notice I put the emphasis on if. So we have to understand Jesus offers us a choice. He started it off with the conditional word. The word if implies two things. There is an intentional decision that needs to be made, and that not, or some will respond in the positive and some will not. It's your choice. We go through the scriptures, Jesus never begged anyone to follow him. Matter of fact, this is just what I've gathered from reading the words of Jesus. What the things that Jesus actually said. In most of our Bibles, those are the red letters, right? You could make a case that Jesus tried to discourage people from following him. It's not that he just tried to discourage people. He wanted people to understand this idea that if you follow me, you need to know what you're getting into. You need to understand that it's going to cost you something, that it's going to be the road less traveled, because it's the hard road. And our human nature, all of us, we would, if left to ourselves, take the path of least resistance. Always. That's what we do. That's our human nature. We're always looking for. That's why when we pull up on GPS, now we're looking for the best route. But then we want to see the traffic, and we're watching, and boy, we see that red line right in the traffic, and now we're going, okay, is there a way I can get around and avoid that slowdown? Because we like it easy. Think about the in Matthew 19, the story, we call him the rich young ruler, right? He comes to Jesus and said, I've done all of this. What else must I do? Jesus said, that's great. Now go sell everything you own, give the money to the poor, and come follow me. He gave the guy a choice, right? He gave him an option. And this guy, it's not there's anything wrong with having money or having possessions. Jesus never said that, although Jesus never really promised a lot of that either. But that's a whole nother message. I'm not going to go down that road. I've already made enough people mad as it is today. But money was his idol. See, God's not going to let us hang on to anything that he knows will come between us and him. I mean, at one point, Jesus says, if you love your father or mother more than me, you're not worthy of me. It also records him saying that unless you hate your... he said some tough stuff. And we've gotten this idea that we can follow Jesus and be comfortable in our flesh and be comfortable the way the world says we need to be comfortable. I'm not saying we can't have some things in life and some areas in life that make us comfortable, but if we spend our time and our energy pursuing that comfort, you can't pursue your comfort and follow Jesus. Jesus said you can't serve two masters. You can't serve God and money. You can't serve God and comfort. You can't follow Jesus and pursue your comfort, because those two will inevitably clash. It doesn't matter what your comfort is, what your idol is. There will come a point, just like it did with that rich young ruler, where Jesus says, it's that or it's me. You have to choose. Now, Jesus didn't beg the rich young ruler. He gave him a choice. Now, the next time we hear about the rich young ruler is never. Right? He walked away. He was saddened because he knew in his heart that those possessions were more valuable to him than the kingdom of God. Jesus made it clear to everyone, if you desire to follow him, you must deny yourself. You have to give up your own way. You have to give up what you want. Not that you'll never get what you want, but you have to say, God, I want your will, and I want you more than I want that. So if I have to choose, I'm going to choose you first and always. I want to live in a big house and have nice things. But God, if I have to choose between that and doing your will, I'll do your will. God, if I have to drive a car that's 20 years old, 21 years old, to do your will, then that's fine. Not only will I drive it, I'll be happy with it. Because I know that you've called me to work in this profession or to do this, and I can't do that and have a brand new car every 2 years like I like. That's the reality. We have to deny ourselves. We have to take up our cross. Again, everyone that heard Jesus say that knew exactly what he was talking about, because there was the only context for the cross was death. The only purpose for the cross, it wasn't put up in cemeteries as a memorial. The only thing they knew about the cross was it is an instrument of death, and when you pick one up, that is the instrument of your death. Sometimes I think it would be easier if we were facing a physical death than the death of our flesh while yet we still live. It would just be easier. God, go ahead and take me home because this is hard. At least if they were going to kill me, it would be quick and it would be over, and I would be face to face with Jesus. But now I have to walk this out. And my flesh wants to rise up. I don't know about you guys, but I have to keep putting my flesh back on that cross. And I have to keep nailing that joker down. And when I think I've got enough nails in it and I turn around, turn my back to it for a moment, the next thing you know, I'm driving somewhere and and because I've already been very open and honest about I need Jesus more when I'm behind the wheel of my car than I do any other time. That's when my flesh really wants to rise up. And now I'm having to put another nail in that joker. And it hurts. It hurts because the world tells us, no, you've got a right to get them back. You've got a right to do this. They hurt you, get them back. Now let's take a look so we can get a little bit of better understanding of this. Let's look back before what led up to these events of Jesus saying this. What happened before verse 21 when Jesus said to his disciples, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to go be crucified. And oh, by the way, if you want to follow me, you have to take up your cross as well. In verse 13, Matthew 16 in verse 13 through 20, it's a story where if you've been in the church for long, you're familiar with. Jesus sits his disciples down and he asks them a question. He says, who do who do men say that I am? And so they start giving the various answers. And then Jesus says, well, who do you say that I am? Brings us to that ever important question. And of course, you hear my boy Peter jumps in because, he's always one. He'll jump out and say something quick. He's going to jump in. I got this one. I know it. You're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And, you're the Messiah. You're the one we've been waiting on. And this is it. And you're here. And Peter was right. But even Peter didn't understand what he was saying. Because it's not long after this that Peter says, well, we're not ever going to let that happen to you. We won't stand for it. And Jesus looks at Peter, my boy Peter, and says, get behind me, Satan. Because your mind is not on the things of God. This is the beginning of Jesus putting two terms together that they didn't think went together. Suffering and Messiah. See, the Messiah was coming to set them free. Free from the oppression of the Romans. At least that's what they thought. Exactly. To establish his kingdom. I mean, Jesus has already been talking about his kingdom. John the Baptist started at the very beginning, for the kingdom of God is at hand. They're thinking in their flesh, they're thinking kingdom. King, kingdom, hey, this guy's the real deal. You couldn't argue with what they had seen. I mean, they've seen miracles. They've seen dead people get up. They've seen blind people healed. They've seen the lame walk at just a word. This guy can do anything. I mean, you mean to tell me he's got the power to raise someone else from the dead, but he can't keep himself from dying? This was their understanding. We look at it that way sometimes too. We had a conversation at the dinner table last night about how some people don't understand why God lets bad things happen. Because, I mean, after all, if he had the power to raise himself up from the dead, if he's all powerful, if he truly created all of this from just a spoken word, doesn't he have the power to stop bad things from happening? Now, that's a whole different conversation, but this was their mindset. This was their mindset of, if he's got this kind of power, can he not save himself? Thank God he didn't, but yes, he absolutely could have. Jesus at any point could have said, you know what, we need a new plan. This is not going to work. He could have said, we'd had enough of these foolish jokers one time and we just flooded the whole place. Now, I know we swore we'd never destroy the world again by a flood, but we still got other options. I'm just, let's be real about it. If we're going to understand the power that Jesus contained, because we can't understand his choice, truly understand it, if you don't understand that at any moment he could have said, enough. I'll just wipe them all out and we'll start over. We've done this once, we can do it again. I remember the old jokes Bill Cosby used to talk about it. His daddy would tell him, boy, I brought you in this world and I'll take you out. Exactly. And it doesn't matter to me because I can make another one look just like you. I mean, that's what he used to say. Okay, God created humans the first time, right? He could have wiped us all out at that point and said, we'll start over. But he didn't. See, all this is leading up to that moment. Because, see, we have to make a decision based on that moment. Jesus laid out the decision we were going to have to make. He said, if you want to follow me. If you're going to follow me. And that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about trading for comfort, but really we're talking about counting the cost. Because if you truly decide to follow him, then you need to have counted the cost, because we don't want to be those people. We don't want to be a Judas that followed him for 3 years, that saw everything. I mean, Judas was part of the... Understand that Jesus didn't just have 12 people that followed him for 3 years. He had many people that followed him. Because when it came time, they said, we need to replace Judas. They said, well, let's select from among those that have been with us the entire time. So it was more than just the 12. But Judas was one of the 12. That was the inner circle. That was the council. Those were the ones that had his ear. Those were the ones that he pulled aside from time to time to make sure they understood the parables he was teaching. Those were the ones that got to have the sit-down meals where they asked questions of Jesus. Okay, we don't understand. What did that mean? This is who Judas was a part of. We don't want to be like Judas and spend this time. And then at some point, we realize, hey, this is not what I thought it was. This is not working out the way I thought it would. I see where this is going, and this is not going to be... This joker's not going to be setting up an earthly kingdom anytime soon, and I'm looking for that earthly kingdom, so I'm looking for something here. So let me make a deal with the powers that are here now. See, I think that Judas got a similar offer as to what, now listen to this, as to what Satan offered Jesus when he took him up on the temple and he showed him all the kingdoms of the world. And he said, all of this can be yours if you'll just bow down to me right now. And see, Satan does the same thing with us now. All of this stuff can be yours. See, here's the deal. It's all going to belong to Jesus anyhow. What Satan was offering him was the comfort of right now. He was offering him the comfort of, you can have all of this without having to go to the cross, without having to suffer, without having to have your father turn his back on you. I can give you this now. Sounds a whole lot more comfortable than going to the cross. I think Judas got the same kind of offer. You can have some security. You can have some financial status. You can have it now and not have to go through anything. Now, as we learn from the rest of the story with Judas, it doesn't work out the way Satan promises it. But we do that too. We want our comfort now. We want our blessing now. We want our rewards now. And Jesus says we have to take up our cross in the now. We have to deny ourselves in the now. And as I was preparing for this, it amazes me sometimes how we don't really understand where we've compromised, where we've given into our comfort, and we've decided that the world's standards are acceptable. And this is one that really, it's almost hard to articulate it. But, and look at the cars we drive. Look at the houses that we live in. I think about the house I grew up in. It wasn't a small house, but it was about 1,500 square feet. And there were 4 of us. We lived in that house, and it was plenty. They don't build 1,500 square foot houses anymore. Look around. The houses they're building now, 2,500 square foot, 3,000 square foot. We're all excited because we can go out and get a new house, and we get a big house. But then we don't ever stop to consider how that big house now limits what we're available to, limits how we're available to follow Jesus. See, I'm a firm believer that if God calls you to do something, He'll provide a way for you to do it. I believe that with all my heart. But I also believe that sometimes if you're going to find that way, you're going to have to be like that rich young ruler. We're going to have to give up. We're going to have to sacrifice. It's not just material things, it's time. It's time. We commit to this, we commit to that. And parents, we're bad about, we use our kids as an excuse. Because our kids, they go to school and we work, but then after school they have piano lessons and they have karate that they go to and they have softball practice or volleyball practice and you know we have to get, you know, we try to get to church as much as we can on Wednesday nights, but we're busy almost every night of the week and we limit how we can follow God because we've chosen to be comfortable. And what I mean by being comfortable is we're not being different from the world. We're doing what the world does. Look at our church buildings, and this is just the reality. I'm not against big church buildings, but most of the time when somebody's building a new big church building, right, they're building a big new fancy church building with all the bells and whistles. Because, see, that's what the world's looking at. How many revivals have started in a tent out in a field? I'm just saying, this is not if we build the right building, people will come to God. Because we can have, there are churches all over this country that have beautiful facilities. And the power and presence of God just doesn't seem to be there. Because it's not about the building. Guys, I know this is I'm saying some hard stuff that could come across as judgmental, and I really hope and pray it's not. I'm just giving you what's on my heart, because when we compromise for comfort, and by comfort, as I'm standing here and I'm working this out in my mind even more, I'm seeing that comfort is us conforming to what is the standard or what is acceptable in the world. Because if we put up a big barn, you know, just a big square building, and we just had bare floors, and, you know, we put in just what we had to service the people without all the bells and whistles, without all the fancy, without all the extra, the world's going to look at that and go, what did they not count the cost? Did they start out and it not be able to finish? Because they would look at it as unfinished. You know. But if we conform to the standards of the world, if we don't want to stand out, if we don't want to be different. Because see, when we take up our cross and follow Him, when we decide to follow Him, we've decided to go counter to the culture. Jesus has always run counter to culture. He did in that day. I mean, story after story after story, account after account, Jesus did things that in the culture you just didn't do. It was not acceptable. Jesus had conversations with people. They criticized Jesus because He ate with sinners. They criticized Him because He went to their house, because, you know, a good Jew wouldn't be caught dead in that kind of house. Jesus spoke up, and this is something we've got to get way better at. And by we, I mean us as individuals and the church collectively, but this is us as individuals, is speaking out when wrong occurs, when injustice happens. But see, that's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to stand up and say, hey, that's wrong. It shouldn't be that way. Injustice is injustice. And we should speak out. The common quote is always, being that all that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Exactly. And we've become complacent because we have, I don't know, low estimate in just in Cumberland County. Okay, I know we're not in Cumberland County, but that's where I live. That's the numbers I'm most familiar with. We easily have, 20,000 people that would name the name of Jesus Christ. We struggle to get 100 to show up and stand on a sidewalk against abortion. We struggle to get people to commit to fast and pray about abortion. We have all kinds of problems. We have a homeless problem. We have domestic violence problems. We have human trafficking issues. And where are the Christians? Where are we? Or have we become comfortable with, I go to church, and you know what, I give my 10% to the church, and that's wonderful. Just on a side note, that's just the beginning. All right, I'm off money now. Everybody can relax again. I'm not. But even in that, see, sometimes we have to deny ourselves in how we spend our money. See, if I'm following Christ, if I've chosen to follow Him, and this is kind of one of those, in management training, we're taught that the way you write up employees, especially the way you give a final written warning, is you understand that this is your final written warning. If you choose to do this, whatever the action is, again, then you are choosing to no longer work here. So the reality of it is, if we choose to follow Christ, we are choosing to deny ourselves and take up our cross. That's this. One choice covers it all. We can't choose to follow Christ and then the others become optional. That decision's already made. So in that case, it's not the 10% that belongs to God. It's all of it. So I'm now responsible to God for what I do with all my money. Not, oh, here I paid my church dues. You may never heard it put that way, but some of you have heard that term. You know what I'm talking about. You show up on the first Sunday of the month and you pay your church dues, and then you're good. I've paid my church dues. Now the rest of it I can do what I want with. See, when we choose to follow God, and I'm off notes and I'm off slides, but I promise you it's in there. When we choose to follow Christ, we're choosing to give Him all of it. We're choosing to make ourselves accountable to Him for all of it. So I can't come to church on Sunday and, you know, if I'm a real good Christian, I'll come to church on Sunday morning and Wednesday night. But then I can do whatever I want the rest of the time. See, there are things I don't participate in because I chose to follow Christ. Amen. And when I chose to follow Christ, I'd already made a decision, am I going to participate in that or not? Some things I don't have to make a decision when the opportunity presents itself. Am I going to be a part of this? Hey, a group of us guys are going out to play golf, and man, we're going to have 2 cases of beer, and I don't have to make a decision on that. And I'm not going to get into the whole alcohol thing, right or wrong. That's a conversation for another time. But, you know, I had a student ask me about that the other day. All I'm going to say is about this. I've never heard anybody who said they made a decision when they were under the influence of alcohol talk about it like it was the best decision they've ever made. So we'll just leave that there. You know, there's certain things I just don't participate in and I don't have to make a decision. It's not a choice anymore. I chose to follow Christ. So that decision's already made. There's certain things I don't spend my money on because that decision's already been made. See, when we choose this, and you guys that have heard me before, you know I'm all about making an informed decision. I guess that's why I hit this so hard. Because if you haven't chosen to follow Christ, it's the best decision you can ever make. But I don't want you to make that decision thinking that your life is all of a sudden going to become easy, that everything's going to be great, and that all your problems will be solved, and you'll never face hardship. See, we cannot be complacent in being comfortable. Jesus and the apostles consistently call the Christian away from a life lived according to the way of the world. That's what I've been talking about. We're called to a radical new way of thinking and living. It starts in our minds. It starts in our hearts. It starts with how we think. That's why you have to be careful what you make allowances or excuses for. It's not that big of a deal. Because before long, it's not that big of a deal becomes it's perfectly fine. A little gambling with a little bit of money, it's not a problem. That's how addicts justify it. A lot of times they start out with just a little bit. Oh, and they get to a point, Julio, I know you've heard this before, I'm good now, I can handle just a little bit. And now they've made an allowance for a little bit, and before you know it, they're in full-on addiction again because they made an allowance for just a little bit. Because I don't want to stand out. I don't want to be different. I don't want to be the only one at the business dinner that's not drinking. I don't want to be the only one on the business trip that's not going out to the so-called gentleman's club. I hate that term because a gentleman wouldn't be there to begin with, but that's a whole nother sermon series. You know? We make excuses because I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to be singled out. I don't want to speak out against this issue because too many people won't agree with me. I don't want to speak out against this issue because I see it differently than the people at my church do. I don't want to call it what it is because I don't want to be uncomfortable. We do that. Jesus has said plainly, if you're not willing to be uncomfortable, stay home. He didn't say it in those words, but he said if you want to be comfortable, following me is probably not your best bet. I mean, he told one group, he said, the Son of Man doesn't even know where he's going to lay his head. Look, you follow me, that's great, but I don't even know where I'm going to sleep tonight. He sent his disciples out to prove this point to them. He said, don't take any money. Don't take any supplies. Just go. This is what we're called to. I'm not saying we're all called to go sell everything we own and give all the money away. I'm not saying we're called to head out, leave here today, and just decide to go on a trip with no money, but we're called to follow Jesus. And when you follow him, when we deny ourselves and we take up our cross, then he has to be enough. Oh, give me just a second. When Jesus called you and I to come and follow him, he called us to come and die. Again, a physical death would be easier because that's going to be short, it's going to be over. Radical obedience to Christ is not easy. It's not comfort, not health, not wealth, and not prosperity in this world. Radical obedience to Christ risks losing all these things. But in the end, such risk finds its reward in Christ, and he is more than enough for us. What profit does it gain a man, or profit a man, if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? I think Elon Musk is an incredible individual. Okay? He is a very intelligent man. Tesla, SpaceX, richest man in the world, they believe that he will be the world's first trillionaire. Okay? It will mean absolutely nothing if he doesn't know Jesus Christ. Amen. It will be for nothing. And I am gathering from his own words that he doesn't know Jesus at this moment. He'll have gained the whole world. He'll be the world's first trillionaire. I mean, most of us can't really comprehend what it would be like to be worth $1 trillion. But to gain the whole world, to gain all of that, and then he'll stand before God in the day of judgment if he doesn't know Jesus Christ, and it won't matter. It won't amount to anything. We compromise. Because we want to be comfortable. Because we think that this path that we're on, that if God's involved in it, it's going to be easy and it's going to be successful. Every time I go there, I remember when God told Jeremiah, I want you to go to these people and I want you to say this to them. And then said, but understand they're not going to listen. See, we've bought into this idea that if God's in it, if it was God's plan, that it's just going to succeed. And so the church, we're really bad about this. We'll try something, and it won't be successful the first time. So we just put that away and say, well, that just must not have been God's plan. We do that as individuals. We think God's called us to do something. God's called us to go witness to somebody. We go talk to them, and they shut us down hard. Well, I must have missed it. Because if that had been God, then they would have dropped to their knees the moment I started talking and begged for Jesus. Amen. And so we quit because it was hard, because it was uncomfortable. Yes, sir. Again, this is a tough one. This is something that I even just sharing with Jennifer last night about what it was, because I've been very quiet this week about what I'm speaking on, which is unusual for me. And it's like, I wish that God would give me those happy, encouraging, give me once I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, because that's absolutely true. Just once, give me the come unto me, all you who are heavy laden, for my yoke is light, and I'll give you rest. Those kind of messages. I'm going to close with this. Don't misunderstand me. God is not calling us to be miserable. He's not. We're not supposed to be miserable. Where the joy of the Lord is my strength, right? We're supposed to have joy. So in doing this, I was drawn to Acts chapter 5. And in Acts chapter 5, some of the apostles, they've already been brought in before the council once. They've been told not to speak in the name of Jesus again, or there'll be consequences. Well, they said, you decide for yourselves. We're going to decide for us. Is it better that we obey God or man? We have to obey God, so we're going to keep preaching. So in Acts chapter 5, it starts out with Ananias and Sapphira and their whole, getting killed because they lied to the man of God. But anyhow, and then it goes into they get arrested now because they're preaching in the name of Jesus. And the council wants to kill them. They want them dead. They figured the only way we're going to stop them is if we kill them. One man on the council says, look, be careful how you deal with this. He goes back through the history of the Jewish people, how people had come up, and then when they were killed, they gathered a big following like Jesus, but when they died, the followers scattered, and they were forgotten. And he names 2 or 3 people. Excuse me. He says, so be careful what you do with them. If this thing is not of God, it'll die off. But if it's of God, you can't stop them, and you'll find yourself opposing God. So they listened to that wise counsel. So instead of killing them, they had them put in prison. Well, the angel of the Lord let them out of prison. They went up, got out of prison. They went right back to the temple and started preaching again in the name of Jesus. This time the council comes and gets them. They beat them. They beat them, okay? They left. They beat them and then told them, don't speak in Jesus' name anymore, and let them free. The apostles left the beating full of joy. Now wait. That they were considered worthy to suffer for His name's sake. I'm not saying we should look for reasons or opportunities to suffer. I'm not saying we should expect to be miserable. But the reality of it is, if we are going to follow Jesus in this world, we are going to have to be uncomfortable. We're going to suffer. It is a given. We have to figure out and find that place in Christ where we not only have peace, but we consider it not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing when people talk about me, or they look at me funny, or they want to put me out of this group or that group, because I'm standing right with Jesus and I'm following Jesus. So I'm being uncomfortable. I'm speaking out. It's not a bad thing. It is truly an honor to be counted worthy to suffer for His name's sake. When we can get that, I mean, these guys suffered. They were known as those that have turned the world upside down. That was said of them. Those men that have turned the world upside down have come here. Now, they didn't have the internet. They didn't have Facebook Live. They didn't have the Bible, period. Much less in their pocket. I don't have my phone on me because I give it to my wife when I'm up here. But if I did, I'd pull it out and show you. They didn't have the phone or the Bible they carried in their pocket with them at all times. That has a fancy search feature, so you don't even have to know exactly where the verse is found. You just have to know a couple of key words in that verse. You can type it in and pull it up. So even if you're out trying to talk to somebody, well, the Bible says, hang on just a second, I know it's here. Give me just a second, I'll find it. And see, there it is. They didn't have that. And they were known as the men that turned the world upside down. What they did have is they had the right understanding of what Jesus meant when He said, if you're going to follow me. They made a choice. They picked up their cross. Some of them literally. Back to my boy Peter. Yes, Peter came to the end. He got this. Peter was going to be crucified. Okay? Peter said, whoa, crucify me upside down. I'm not worthy to be crucified in the same manner as my Jesus. He was willing and ready to pay that price, to suffer that, but said, no, I'm not worthy of like He did. We have to get that understanding. It is an honor, it is a privilege, and it should be a joyous thing to be counted worthy to suffer. It's not something we should avoid. It's not something we should, let me rephrase that, something we should try to avoid, because you can't. You can't follow Jesus and avoid it. Jesus said in John 16:33, He said, in this world you will have trouble. Period. End of conversation. Now He gave us what we needed to know. He said, but fear not, for I've overcome the world. It's not a matter of if we have trouble, we don't have to fear. When we have trouble. If you're here today and you haven't made that decision to follow Jesus, I promise you, it is the best decision you'll ever make. There is nothing like, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I don't understand, I don't know how somebody survives in this world without Jesus. I don't know how you can mentally and physically survive we live in a fallen world. I guess the reality of it is we need to decide, you need to decide today, are you going to suffer without Jesus? Or are you going to suffer with Jesus? And when I say suffer, I mean bad things happen. They happen to all of us. I know more people today with cancer than I've ever known in my life. I know more families right now today that are dealing with the loss of a loved one. And I'm not talking about great-grandma. I'm talking about the 46-year-old wife. I'm talking about the 54-year-old husband and father and grandfather. I'm talking about people a lot closer to my age than I'm comfortable with that are dealing with that. These things happen. Whether you know Jesus or not, these things happen. If you don't know Jesus, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you survive. I wish I could be a little more gracious, but I just don't. I don't get it. And I don't know why you would want to. So the choice is here today. I'm not going to put you on the spot today. If you don't know Jesus the way I'm talking about knowing Jesus, you can talk to myself, you can talk to Julio, you can talk to John, any one of us, and we will, Pablo, any one of us, and we'll take the time. Yes, we've all got lunch plans and things we want to do today, but there's absolutely nothing we have going on that would be more important than taking that time to introduce you to Jesus. If you do know Jesus, if you have made that decision to follow Jesus, and you weren't quite sure on what you were getting yourself into, my prayer for you today is that you've been challenged and encouraged. Because see, Jesus said He'll be with us always. There's never a moment. You may be by yourself, but you're never alone. You may feel like you're the only one that understands what you're going through. But first of all, you're not. That's a lie straight from the pits of hell. Because the devil loves nothing more than to separate us out and convince us we're the only one that's ever gone through anything like that. We're the only one that can understand. But even on the off chance that you are the first person in the history of the world to go through what you're going through, Jesus understands. He knows better than you do in reality. He knows what you need better than you do. He knows how to be what you need. Stand if you're able. Guys, I love each and every one of you. I appreciate you. There is a time coming, you look around the world. I have a desire to see God move in ways we've never seen before. But the stories we hear coming out of China, out of the Middle East, the way God is moving there, there are certain things, certain ways that I believe the only way we're going to see them is if we're willing to suffer. If we're willing to stand for Christ and we're willing to suffer. I think about the 14-year-old Muslim girl that I heard about this week that came to Christ, and her father turned her over to the local authorities. And she was given the opportunity to renounce her faith and to convert back to Islam, and she stood in the face of that, knowing what the consequences would be. And the stories that we hear of how God is doing miraculous things, and we think, oh, how incredible it would be. If we want to see God move that way, we've got to be willing to take up our cross. We've got to be willing to deny ourselves. We've got to be willing to be uncomfortable, to stand up and speak out. God, we come to you right now. God, I lift up everyone in this room. God, I pray right now, God, if there's anyone here that doesn't know this Jesus that we're talking about, God, that you would just, God, stir in them the desire to know, the desire to understand. God, for each one of us that has made that decision to follow Jesus, we ask for boldness. God, I ask for an accurate understanding of what you're calling the church to, what you're expecting from the church. God, the church being the members, the individuals. God, what you're expecting of us. God, give us a boldness to speak when words need to be said. God, to act when words are not enough. God, we don't seek anything for our glory. God, we don't seek anything to draw attention to us. But God, push us out of our comfort zones so that your kingdom and your glory may be known in this community, God. God, so that lives can be changed, but more importantly, God, so that eternal destinies can be affected. God, just like your word says that you sent your Son, that whosoever would believe, God, that it's your desire that none would perish, God. God, it's our desire, God, that we would make it difficult for people to die and go to hell. God, that your kingdom, we would be on the advance, and God, we would be on the front lines of that advancing your kingdom, God. Amen. That we would take territory back. God, that we would claim souls for your kingdom, God. It's not about building our kingdom or even our church, God. It's about building your kingdom. It's about building your body, God. It's about snatching those souls from the fires of hell, God, and bring them into your kingdom. God, we ask you to guide and direct us as we go through this week. Open our eyes to the opportunities that you've placed before each one of us each day. It's in Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.